Thank you for that introduction. So I study self-organization. Self-organization is a fundamental process, ubiquitous in nature. And it's how group-level phenomena emerge from simple individuals. So group-level phenomena could be patterns, coordination, and these things emerge from individuals with no leader. For example, molecules are organized into crystals. That's self-organization. Self-organization is how sand grains form ripples on a beach, and it's also how schools of fish form cohesive motion. Self-organization for most tasks is also how ant colonies are organized. And as you may know, ant colonies are really amazing at cooperation. I study ant cooperation in the task of cooperative transport, which you can see here. This is a group of ants working together to move a large dead cricket. Some ant species are capable of moving things many, many thousands of times their weight. And they're really good at this. But this is a big challenge. And actually, one of the biggest challenges about cooperative transport is just for all of the individuals to agree on a single direction to move the object. In ant species that are not as good at this, individuals will pull in opposite directions, sometimes for a really long time. So my main question is, how do these ants agree on a single direction? How do they form a consensus? And ultimately, how do they break deadlocks about travel direction? And I look at this question in a few different ways. I'm looking at behavioral parameters at an individual level that allow for faster deadlock breaking. So if the ants are really stubborn, how does that impact this? I'm also looking at this question in the context of obstacle navigation. So I had a lot of fun last summer getting in the way of ants. I would put down these walls made out of Lego and see how they navigate around these obstacles. And this is interesting because this is a situation where you're bound to have a lot of deadlocks arising, because the ants have to agree on which direction to go around this obstacle. They could go left or right. Which are they going to pick? I'm also looking at this question in a theoretical context. So I've done a lot of modeling of possible behavioral rules that individuals might follow. So think of these rules as a procedure that an individual follows. And I'm looking at possible rules to see which of those lead to a consensus. For which ones does it work? Which ones does it not work? And so this also involved in this is what information do these ants have to be able to get? And it turns out from my theoretical studies that ants can have very simple rules. There's nothing complex that's required. But they do need to be able to tell what the other ants are doing. They need to be able to tell, OK, the majority of the ants are going that way. I'm going to go that way, too. I think I unplugged the sound from the computer. I'm sorry about that. I get a little excited about ants, guys. So they need this information, and this begs the question, how are they getting this information? How is information transferred among individuals? And this, interestingly, there's no evidence at all for direct communication in cooperative transport. It doesn't seem like they're just talking to each other and figuring it out. Instead, my hypothesis is that they're communicating indirectly through the object itself as an intermediary. So they're feeling the tug and pull on the object. They're feeling deformations or vibrations caused by ants on the other side and using that to see where they're trying to go. And I'm really excited to test this hypothesis this summer. This is the work that this Dean's Grant is going to allow me to do. So I'll be going to Arizona and testing this hypothesis with the species of ant that you saw in the video. And I'm going to be trying to confuse them by cutting off potential modes of information transfer. So I'll give them several different baits. Each of these baits cuts off a particular possible mode of information transfer. So we'll give them, as an example, a completely rigid bait that cannot transmit deformations. If they're still capable of transporting that rigid bait just as effectively, then that particular mode is not what they're using to communicate. So each of these baits cuts off a different one, and I'll see which baits they're still capable of efficiently moving. And that'll tell me how they're communicating, or a little bit more about how they're communicating in this process. And more broadly, this work informs self-organization processes in general, which for a huge range of biological and abiotic systems, it's how you get complexity from simple individuals. Thank you. Sorry about that. Is it back to?
We have time to ask our presenters maybe one question each. Does anybody have a question?